What's up, guys? Swift here covering everything Chicago Bears related, and we got a bunch more information on Caleb Williams and the Bears' top 30 visits directly from Albert Breer. A lot of juicy details. Let's go ahead and get right into it. First off, it seems like Caleb Williams has checked all of the boxes for the Chicago Bears and will likely be the number 1 pick later this month. Reports indicate that Caleb will not be meeting with any other teams. The fact that he isn't even going to let other teams wine and dine him and take him out for a free dinner was pretty surprising to me. All reports out of Chicago say the meeting with Caleb Williams went great, and they did finally get his medicals. He completed his top 30 visit on Wednesday, but he arrived in Chicago on Tuesday night. He was part of a larger group that also came and visited Hallis Hall. He was joined by other NFL draft prospects Zach Frazier, Cam Kinchens, Dallas Turner, and Tyler Guyton. The group would split into two and have dinner at two different steakhouses in Chicago, according to Albert Breer. In Caleb Williams' group, he was joined by a couple of his teammates, as well as DJ Moore and Tyreek Stevenson. It sounds like the team is trying to jumpstart the relationship between Caleb and DJ. You love to see that. We all know that DJ had a great relationship with Justin Fields, but we need him to develop chemistry with Caleb Williams going forward. I think that's still really important. On top of this, reports are that Caleb will not be meeting with any other teams. The Bears seem locked in on selecting Caleb Williams number 1 overall. So far, it also doesn't look like we will even have a top 30 visit with Drake May or Jaden Daniels, according to some reports on Twitter. But until we know all of the top 30 visits, that's kind of speculation. So let's check in again on our top 30 visits. I've went ahead and included RAS scores on this list too, but the only QB we've brought in so far is Caleb Williams. But this is our most up-to-date list of guys we've brought in for top 30 visits, now up to 17 of the 30 players. Cam Kinchens, Xavier Worthy, Graham Barton, and Chop Robinson are the most recent additions, as well as Tyler Guyton. I've also went ahead and included the RAS scores here, and per usual, you'll notice that almost every player we've brought in for a top 30 visit seem to be very athletic. The guys on the list that have scored, every one of them has over a 9.0 on the RAS, except for two guys, safety Cam Kinchens and receiver Jaquan Jackson. And I want to talk a little bit about both of those guys for a second. Cam might have only scored a 2.11 on the RAS, but I loved his tape. If his poor testing causes him to fall too far in the draft, I'd be really interested in bringing him to Chicago. Cam was a guy seen as a first round prospect early on, and now people are talking like he could fall to day 3. If Cam Kinchens was still on the board in round 5, I don't care what his testing looked like, go ahead and draft him. And then I wanted to mention Tulane wideout Jaquan Jackson as well, a guy who's buried way down on my list of receivers in the most stacked class of receivers I've ever seen. Jaquan Jackson is a guy that most of you might have never even heard of. He finished last year at Tulane with just 439 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. Nothing really eye-popping, but he did do one thing his entire career. But there is something he did his entire career: return punts. And the Bears are still looking for a punt returner. Dante Pettis is currently our guy. Jackson had 677 punt return yards on his career and a 90-yard house call. His 3.13 RAS score won't really matter if he goes undrafted and comes in and wins a punt return job. That's where I think this one could be headed. Jackson is a guy who could get lost in this year's receiver class, and since we don't have a 7th round pick, polls could be getting a head start on a guy who could go undrafted. Most people will see a guy like this included on the list and scroll right on by, but I always try to look at everything here, and this is a guy who should be available on day 3. Most sources have him with a 5th or 6th round grade, but he could go undrafted in this year's wide receiver class. Keep an eye out for Jaquan Jackson. Other than Cam and Jaquan, though, everyone else on the list scored over a 9.0. Even the guys who didn't test are very athletic. There's a clear trend here, and there also continues to be more offensive players brought in than defensive guys so far. And we're now less than 3 weeks away from the NFL draft, and the Bears seem zeroed in on Caleb Williams. What do you think we will do with pick number 9 and the rest of the draft? Stay tuned, guys. I'll be here to cover it every step of the way. Please hit that like button for me. And until next time, bear down.